On Christmas night, a single comment shattered 15 years of trust and made me wonder, is the man I married. Leading a double life, I sat across from him. In that dimly lit restaurant, heart pounding, when the waitress blurted, "Your wife doesn't usually look like this." 15 years ago, I stood at the altar trembling with excitement and love as he took my hand and vowed to honor, cherish, and remain faithful through every season of life. In those early days, honesty wasn't just a guideline, it was the air we breathed. We built our trust one moment at a time, confessing mistakes, freely sharing our dreams at midnight, over coffee, and promising to face every challenge side by side. I remember how we celebrated our first apartment together, a cozy rented space filled with hand-me-down furniture and fresh paint, and how he stayed up all night assembling my favorite bookshelf because he knew how much it meant to me. That small act of devotion told me everything I needed to know about the man I'd married. As the years passed, our bond deepened. We navigated cross-country moves, job changes, and family losses with open hearts. When I landed the promotion I'd longed for, he threw me a surprise dinner party with our closest friends, insisting that my accomplishments were just as much his joy. And when he lost his father, I held him through the grief, learning the language of his sorrow, so I could speak comfort when words failed. In every trial, we found a way back to each other, through candid conversations and the simple reassurance of, "I love you no matter what." Parenthood arrived next, and our daughter's birth wove new threads into our tapestry of trust. We shared every diaper change at 2 a.m, every triumph when she uttered her first word, and even the exhaustion that threatened to pull us apart. Yet each sleepless night became a testament to our partnership. He would soothe her with gentle hums, while I caught a moment's rest, and I would hold his hand when he doubted his parenting instincts. Our unwavering honesty about fears, joys, and everything in between became the compass guiding our family through uncharted waters. Minnie Hook. 15 years of laughter, tears, and midnight promises until a stranger's comment cracked the foundation. Looking back now, I see that our marriage was a living testament to the power of truth. We didn't just marry each other, we married the idea that we would always choose transparency over convenience, vulnerability over pretense. And though we weathered storms that might have torn lesser couples apart, we emerged stronger each time because we never stopped talking, never stopped trusting. That is why, when the waitress's words hit me like a stone on Christmas night, I felt the tremor down to my bones. The trust we'd spent a decade forging suddenly felt as fragile as glass. Yet, even in that moment of doubt, I clung to the belief that the same honesty that built our marriage could, if we chose, help us rebuild it again. That Christmas night felt like a dream come true, twinkling lights lining every rooftop, carols drifting through the streets, and my husband pulling me close for our first ever dinner at his favorite neighborhood bistro. I remember the warm hush of the dining room as we slid into a corner booth, the scent of rosemary and roasted chestnuts enveloping us. He beamed as if sharing a long-held secret, and I couldn't help but marvel at how thoughtful he was, bringing me to a place he loved so much, yet had never shared with me before. After we'd tucked into our plates of seared salmon and buttery mashed potatoes, I noticed our waitress bright-eyed and efficient, pausing at the table, her smile faltering. "You know, I've seen him here before with a friend who looks a lot like you," she ventured, glancing between us. My breath caught as she leaned in, brow furrowing. "But she usually looks more familiar." Confused, I traced her gaze back to the empty seats around us. "Oh," I laughed nervously. "Actually, I'm his wife." Her eyes widened, and for a moment she looked as though she'd swallowed a shard of glass. I felt a chill creep up my spine as I realized the implication. She'd seen him here many times with another woman, one whose laughter filled these same chairs, whose presence he'd treated as though she were his companion, his confidant, his date. The restaurant's cozy glow suddenly felt too bright, illuminating secrets I'd never anticipated. I forced a smile and thanked the waitress, but my heart pounded so loudly I was certain the entire room could hear it. My husband, sensing the shift, reached across the table with a reassurance that sounded hollow. "If I was cheating on you, I'd never bring you where I took anyone else." I wanted to believe him. My mind raced with memories of his kindness, the years of honesty we'd built together. But each word from the waitress still echoed in my ears, a question mark lingering in the festive air. All the way home, I studied his profile in the rearview mirror, looking for signs of guilt. A tight jaw, eyes a little too bright when he smiled, hands trembling on the wheel. He grew frustrated when I pressed him for answers, insisting he'd never betray me. Yet how could I ignore a stranger's testimony handed to me on silver platters? That Christmas our joy rang hollow. In that moment I realized that even the most beautiful surprises can mask the hardest truths, and that the line between wonder and alarm can be as thin as the edge of a dinner plate. I couldn't let that dinner go unanswered, so, on the drive home, I took a steadying breath and said, "Tell me the truth, who else have you brought here?" His knuckles whitened on the wheel, and for a moment I thought maybe hoped he'd confess. Instead, he forced a tight smile and said, "If I was cheating on you, I'd never bring you to the same place I took anyone else." Point one. His logic felt like a shield deflecting the accusation rather than piercing the doubt. I pressed on. "So, you expect me to believe there's never been another woman in this booth, that you've never sat across from someone whose laughter you enjoyed more than mine?" His jaw clenched and he laughed, half amusement, half irritation. "You're overthinking it," he said, voice low. "Nothing happened here that wouldn't have happened at home." Point two. Instead of empathy, I got annoyance, and it stung more than any admission of guilt. I watched the streetlight zip by and tried again softer. This time, I need you to see how this looks. I need reassurance that I'm not losing my mind. His shoulders slumped as though my plea was a burden. Reassurance, he repeated. I'm telling you right now, you're the only woman for me. But when I asked him to look me in the eyes and say it, he glanced at the windshield. His voice clipped. I don't want to fight about this. Point 3. His refusal to engage left me stranded between his deflection and my fear. All night I replayed his words. You're overthinking I don't want to fight, and felt the gulf between us grow. At home, he shrugged off my questions, heading to the bathroom without a backward glance. I stood in our living room, haunted by the waitress's stunned expression, and realized that reassurance needs more than words. It needs patience, vulnerability, and the willingness to bear another's pain. But when I reached out for understanding, he recoiled, leaving me clutching my own doubts in the cold silence of our once safe home. And in that moment, I understood that the real betrayal wasn't confirmed fidelity or infidelity, but the fracture of trust when compassion turns to frustration at the very question love demands we ask. For the past year, our bed has felt like two islands separated by an ocean of unspoken questions. Nights when I reached for him, only to find empty sheets. Mornings when I woke to the echo of my own heartbeat instead of his gentle stir. At first, I convinced myself it was stress, long hours at work, deadlines, the usual excuses couples accept in busy seasons. But as weeks turned into months, every unfilled embrace became a silent alarm. I tried to light small candles, literal and metaphorical, suggesting weekend getaways, impromptu slow dances in the kitchen, even a couple's massage from a friend's recommendation, anything to thaw the frost creeping between us. He'd smile politely, kiss my forehead, and promise soon, words that echoed into empty nights. I kept asking, what's wrong? Is it me? But his answers felt rehearsed. I'm just tired, he'd say. Or, let's talk about it tomorrow, then click off the light before I could press further. I scrolled back through our messages and calendar invites, searching for the moment. Desire dimmed, but all I found were meeting notes and reminders to pick up groceries. The gap widened until our daughter's college application meetings felt more intimate than my own marriage. Friends noticed my jolting flinch whenever my phone buzzed late, fearing another sorry had to stay late text. My sister asked if I'd turned him down, and I laughed through tears I never have. I whispered. The realization crushed me. He was seeking something, some spark, some comfort beyond our vows. Late-night calls to his work line went unanswered, and I learned to drop the subject, so our family home wouldn't feel like a courtroom accused of crimes I couldn't prove. In that long silence, I mourned not just the absence of sex, but the fading of daily tenderness. No brushing of hair, no soft good morning, no shared warmth under blankets. Our house grew colder each room, a reminder that intimacy is more than passion. It's the constant thread of closeness we'd let unravel. And as I lay awake counting the empty hours, I understood that a year without touch can erode even the strongest foundations, leaving behind walls of doubt where once stood bridges of love. I began to see the impossible in the everyday, the way his phone would light up, and he'd slide out of the room, his quick toss of my gaze telling me he didn't want me to see the screen. I noticed his work calls at odd hours, the sudden need for whispered conversations behind closed doors. Point 1. When I opened his unlocked laptop, something I never thought I'd do. I saw Google searches for dinner reservations that didn't match our plans and a string of Missy-sent messages that vanished before he could explain. A small tremor of alarm slid through me. Were those meant for me or someone else? Mini hook. When everyday routines start to whisper secrets, you learn to listen. Point 2. I watched him delete text threads. Right after I left the room, watched him stash his phone face down on the nightstand. Our joint bank statement turned up unfamiliar restaurant charges and ride shares at 2 a.m. Each entry a question I dared not ask out loud. I found a lipstick stain on a jacket I didn't recognize, and when I asked about it, he brushed it off as coffee when I was away. Every excuse felt flimsier than the last, and each unaccounted for detail knotted my stomach tighter. Point 3. I tapped into my own courage and installed a shared location app. He reluctantly agreed, claiming he had nothing to hide. Yet when I checked it, his pin flickered to places that weren't our home or office. A downtown parking garage at midnight, a dimly lit cafe. He'd never mentioned a residential street 2 towns over. His explanation I had to meet a colleague felt like chalk on marble. As the puzzle pieces piled up, I juggled them in my mind. Hidden passwords, secret texts, lipstick on a collar. They were small, innocuous when taken alone, but together they formed a pattern I couldn't ignore. Each clue pointed to an unseen reality, a life he wasn't sharing with me. One night in the hush before dawn, I laid it all out on our kitchen table, bank statements, screenshots, that jacket with the stain, and waited for him to return from his late meeting. When he walked in and saw the evidence spread out like a crime scene, his face paled. In that moment, I realized gathering clues wasn't about playing detective. It was about claiming my right to the truth. And as he opened his mouth to speak, I braced myself for the explosion that would either confirm my worst fears or shatter the delicate web of suspicion I'd spun too tightly around us both. When the evidence on my kitchen table grew too heavy to carry alone, I reached out to the people I trusted most. My sister, my best friend from college, and his younger cousin, who'd known us both since the beginning. I invited them over one evening under the guise of a casual get-together, but the moment they saw the stack of bank statements, location screenshots, and that lipstick-stained jacket, I knew the air between us had shifted. My sister leaned in first, her brow furrowed as she studied the rideshare charges at 2 a.m. "This isn't you being paranoid," she said softly, placing a comforting hand on my arm. "You've shown me these receipts and I believe you." Point 1. I needed someone to validate that my fear wasn't delusion, and her unwavering support felt like the first brick in rebuilding my certainty. My college roommate, ever the pragmatist, tapped the jacket with a raised eyebrow. "Maybe it's nothing," she suggested, "but you deserve answers." She reminded me of our dorm days' late-night talks about relationships, how we vowed never to settle for less than honesty. Part of me wanted to cling to her optimism, but another part knew her inclination to find a silver lining might gloss over dark corners. Point 2. Balancing their perspectives wasn't easy. My sister's sisterly protective instinct pushed me toward action, while my friend's loyalty to peace tempted me to let things rest. Then his cousin arrived, fresh off a road trip from Texas, eyes wide at the documents spread out before him. "He's family," he said slowly, "but that doesn't mean you should ignore this. If he truly loved you, he'd explain himself." His voice, catching between loyalty to his uncle's wife and loyalty to his uncle, echoed my own heart's division. Point 3. Their combined counsel grounded me. Validation from my inner circle gave me the courage to demand the honest conversation I'd longed for. We sat around the table until hours past midnight, each of them sharing memories of moments when my husband's actions had seemed off-canceled plans, unexplained headlines, and his car phone calls taken in another room. Their anecdotes fit into the pattern I'd uncovered, and I realized I wasn't alone in my suspicions. As they left that night, each offered to stand by me no matter what I decided. Their faith in me, mingled with the weight of what I discovered, crystallized the truth. Sometimes testing your inner circle is not about seeking judgment, but about gathering strength to face the hardest truths. And with their voices echoing in my mind, I knew I was ready to confront him, one final time, armed with love, clarity, and the unwavering support of those who cherished me most. That afternoon, I waited until our daughter was at her friend's house, then sat across from him at our kitchen island, with all my evidence laid out like a challenge. I took a deep breath and asked the first question, plain and unvarnished. "Who else have you been to that restaurant with?" His eyes flickered with surprise before settling on the papers, bank statements. Map. Pins lit up on my phone, a lipstick-stained jacket hanging over a chair. He hesitated, and in that silence I felt the fragile line between hope and despair tremble. I pressed on. "Why did you delete your text threads when you thought I wasn't looking?" His jaw clenched as he stammered something about mistakes and old messages, but the words sounded hollow, as though rehearsed for a confession I didn't believe. Next, I laid down the hardest question I'd been circling around for months. "Where have you been late at night, and who were you?" With his eyes darted away and I saw the quick swallow of shame in his throat. I watched the fight flicker behind his eyes before he tried to deflect again. "Work," he said, voice tight. "Just work." But when I reminded him that my shared location app placed him in that deserted parking garage at midnight, he looked past me at the window, unable to meet my gaze. Each question I asked about the rideshare charge to a cafe I'd never heard of, about the night he claimed to have insomnia, yet returned at dawn, stripped away another layer of excuses. The power of direct questions lay not only in asking them, but in refusing to let his answers slide by. I let the silence stretch until his next denial felt like another lie laid bare against the harsh light of truth. Finally, I laid my last card on the table. "Do you still want to be married to me?" His shoulders slumped as though years of pretense had collapsed in that one question. He took a trembling breath and admitted in a voice thick with regret that he wasn't sure. In that moment, I knew that direct confrontation, armed with clear questions and unflinching resolve, had forced us both to face what we'd been pretending away. The raw honesty it demanded was painful, but it was the only path to clarity. Either we blamed the evidence on a shared misunderstanding, or we acknowledged the new reality our marriage had become. And as he sank into the chair opposite me, head in hands, I realized that I had finally reclaimed my power, not by uncovering every secret, but by boldly demanding the truth. I sat back in my chair, the evidence still strewn across the kitchen counter, and realized the choice before me was more than a reaction to betrayal. It was a decision about my own worth and future. After 15 years of shared laughter tears and the kind of daily intimacy that once felt unbreakable, I faced two paths: rebuild our marriage on a new foundation of honesty, or walk away and protect my heart from further damage. I closed my eyes and pictured both futures. In one, we attended couples therapy, naming the wounds of silence and secrecy in a room of gentle professionals. He would commit to daily check-ins, share every itinerary, and let me into every corner of his world until trust rebuilt. Brick by brick, replaced the gulf that had opened between us. I recalled how veterans of trauma learned to speak their pain so their partners can truly hear, and wondered if we had the courage to speak. Really speak after so many months of unspoken doubts. In the other vision, I saw myself packing a suitcase while our daughter slept upstairs, pulling her into a new life where I didn't have to wonder if his 2 a.m. returns hid someone else's arms. I imagined the freedom of setting boundaries that protected my peace, the solidarity of friends rallying around me at brunches and late-night calls where I could openly grieve without guilt. I pictured rediscovering myself beyond the roles of wife and mother, something I'd quietly sacrificed in the years our intimacy drifted away. My heart ached for what we'd lost. Midnight whispers the warmth of his hand in mine, the comfort of knowing our vows meant forever. But I also felt a fierce clarity. Lasting love is not a promise of perfection, but a pledge to show up vulnerable and honest every single day. I surveyed the room, the framed family photos, our daughter's birthday cards, the kitchen where I confronted him with truths I never hoped to speak aloud. And in that silence, I understood that rebuilding requires his wholehearted yes, or a mutual willingness to heal. If he couldn't step fully into the light of transparency, then his half-hearted denials would forever shadow our next chapter. So, I took a deep breath, set down the papers, and spoke the choice I'd made. We'll try to rebuild together with truth. But if you can't meet me there, then I'll walk away and keep my heart. As I watched the relief and sorrow cross his face, I knew that owning my choice, whatever came next, was the bravest act of love I could give to him, to myself, and to our daughter's future. In choosing to confront the truth rather than slip back into comfortable silence, I reclaimed my voice and set the terms for our next chapter. Whether that means rebuilding together or stepping away to protect my own heart. I learned that love isn't simply a promise to stay. It's the daily commitment to honesty, vulnerability, and respect for each other's boundaries. If rebuilding is our path, it will require shared transparency, patience, and therapy, and small acts of trust, renewed every morning. If walking away is my choice, it will demand self-compassion, support from friends and family, and the courage to believe that I deserve a love anchored in mutual respect. Either way, I know I've honored 15 years of devotion by refusing to settle for anything less than truth. Have you faced the crossroads between forgiveness and self-preservation? Share your story in the comments to remind someone else they're not alone in this struggle. Subscribe for more real-life journeys through love's toughest tests. Hit the bell so you won't miss our next episode on healing after betrayal. And remember, the strongest marriages aren't built on ignorance, but on the fearless choice to trust and to walk away when trust cannot be restored.